One of the things that terrorists hate is normality. You probably hear from my voice that I'm from Northern Ireland, so I've got some, unfortunately, fairly visceral experience of dealing with violent extremism, which is sort of bred in the bone from my childhood days growing up near the border in County Fermanagh in Northern Ireland. So I'm well versed in the psychology of terrorism as a conversation, if you like. We've got to figure out what the conversation is about. We've got to figure out very quickly how to counter what's being said in that conversation. Certainly one of the things that terrorists try to do is to disrupt and provoke a security response. And we have to be very measured and careful in our security response to not fulfill the objectives. Certainly, if you think about Islamist extremism in its current form, which wants to overthrow liberal democracy and create a worldwide caliphate. Now, you can argue that that's completely for the birds and impossible. It's still what the objective is. And so in terms of our response to that, we have to have a what I would call a muscular and decisive security response. But alone, that is necessary but insufficient to deal with what the problem is. There's a couple of things I want to mention also. This was the second terrorist-related murder within a month. Terrorist threat, as you've said, has moved from substantial to severe. I'm not quite sure what the motivation behind that change is. I don't think numerical numbers of attack should dictate how we describe our threat posture, but that seems to have been the case. But there are very troubling parallels, I think, to get into the meat of this, with some other cases, two other cases in particular, in terms of Al Sweilmeen's behaviour and his past biography, if you like. So the parallels are, first of all, with Ahmed Hassan, who attacked Parsons Green tube train with another improvised explosive device, and just like Al Sweilmeen, he had packed that device with shrapnel. So this was an attempt at mass murder, which was only narrowly averted. Hassan was an asylum seeker, a failed asylum seeker who had mental health problems. Fast forward to 2020, and look at the case of Kerry Sadala. He was also a failed asylum seeker with mental health problems, and he managed to, unfortunately, murder 3 people in a Reading Park, as we know, and the motivation behind that was Islamist extremism. So there are some themes, and I don't want to bang on a lot. There's a lot of dimensions to talk about here, including the desecration dimension, which incidentally we still don't know, and we may never know what his intended target was. Was it to murder women and children in a maternity hospital, or was it to proceed to the Remembrance Sunday service? And we can talk about the coincidence of timing, when the detonator went off at 1 minute to 11 o'clock, and arguably one of the most iconic moments in the calendar in British life. Certainly, either way, had he gone in and been successful in what he'd done, he would have caused catastrophic loss of human life, and would have, I am sure, then caused an enormous security reaction. So we can be very thankful that his murderous mission was failed in that sense. So a few themes to talk about that have emerged from some of those parallels that I've just described. First of all, we need to talk about the competence of our protective services to manage risk, to detect risk, and to mitigate risk. And we're not just talking about those incidents I've described in relation to the competence of the security agencies and the risk management agencies. We're also talking about, for example, the catastrophic system failure that was revealed in the inquests into Usman Khan and Sudesh Aman, the Fishmongers Hall and Streatham attackers. So at the moment, I don't think we've got a risk management system, and I know we're going to come on to talk about risk in relation to the parole board, perhaps, that is fit for purpose when dealing with highly dangerous people. Secondly, we've got an asylum system that nobody, I think, would suggest, no matter what perspective you're coming from, is fit for purpose. This asylum system presided over some young men who came from probably brutalized environments, had clandestine journeys and ended up in this country, and were buried basically and far from any reach of the services that they needed in order to address some of their mental health problems and integrate them in any way into this society. Now, it doesn't, again, matter which way you fall on the migration policy issue. We cannot have a situation, surely it is intolerable, where you have a number of people who are coming in as failed asylum seekers, then fail the system, and then go on to devolve into murderous violence. That is not to say, of course, that all people who are seeking asylum are potential terrorists. And we have to nail this down as well. But we have to allow some space, and of course they're not. The vast majority of them are not involved in violent extremism, but a few are, clearly, and they have the potential for enormous and disproportionate harm. So we need a system that is fit for purpose, rather than the threadbare system we have. I've done some work with charities dealing with young unaccompanied asylum seekers, and the support is utterly threadbare, and the intervention is completely ineffectual when it comes to prevent, for example, being involved in people who are flagged. And several of the people that I've mentioned already have been in touch with Prevent. And the third thing that we need to talk about, I think, is the association of violent extremism with mental or developmental disorders. It is absolutely right to say that, first of all, the vast majority of plots that have been detected in this country are from people who've been born in this country. And I would want to reiterate that. But whether you're born in this country or whether you've come into this country as an asylum seeker, there seems to be a fairly significant association with lone actor terrorist incidents and psychological impairment. And what I say when people say, well, that's too difficult to talk about, because on the one hand, people are saying, oh, that's just trying to reduce the potency or the inconvenient fact of a terrorist offender's ideological motivation. I would say, but the dead people are still dead. And there's such a strong association, at least. I'm not saying necessarily a correlation, a causative link, but certainly a correlative link, that we need to do much more about improving our mental health surveillance for, in particular, young asylum seekers who are coming to this country. I think I'm going to stop there and allow anybody else to come in.